excitement in the air. Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in just moments, we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. We have a lot to catch up on. I know we've been talking with the Assemblyman frequently because there's so much going on in Albany, and we really appreciate his time. Couple quick, first wave of the morning. First comments from after the program yesterday. Impeachment of Mr. Biden will only serve the Democratic Party. The best thing the Republicans could do is wait until October to present the evidence against him. I've never really seen a successful strategy from the Republican side. They seem to sit back a lot without a plan. I would agree. That goes to the point, thank you, by the way, to the viewer. That goes to the point I was saying, think about when we heard for years about repealing and replacing Obamacare, and it was a rallying cry at election season and throughout the year. And then we get in control as Republicans. And what happened? We had no plan. The Democrats keep Trump focused on saving himself from jail rather than campaign topics to win. That's an example of a successful strategy. Very true. If you look at the recent decision, they're going to hold court March 25th. Yes, so I would agree with that. Big news coming out of New York, and we will be talking with the Assemblyman about this. The redistricting that has been proposed for the congressional lines. According to Dave Wasserman, and his X handle or Twitter handle is Redistrict, so we assume this is a focus of his. My initial math on New York map proposal, New York's 22nd district, Brandon Williams, who's a Republican, shifts from Biden plus 7 to Biden plus 11. So they're trying to take that seat away from a Republican, and that's exactly what we expected from this. A lot of people are complaining it gives incumbents a boost, which is the least shocking headline that we could probably receive from this. Now, in New York's 19 with Mark Molinaro, you know Mark Molinaro, he's been doing a good job in Washington, but also ran as a governor of New York quite a few years back. His district goes from Biden plus 5 to Biden plus 1. So it goes a little bit towards Republicans' favor in that. And in New York's 18, Pat Ryan, who is a Democrat, goes from Biden plus 8 to Biden plus 11, and otherwise not seeing too many changes like in the 23rd congressional district. But what we're seeing is, and the articles admit it, you've got competitive districts, and what they're trying to do is make them less competitive in favor of Democrats. Now, this does have to be approved by the legislature, and that's why we're going to talk with the Assemblyman about this exact topic when he's in on the program. Hey, look at this. This is a nice comment. Looking forward to today's interview. Yeah, me too. The Assemblyman's going to be joining us in just a little bit. But New York's new congressional maps that were unveiled just yesterday, I don't know if you were following it. I was probably following it a little too close, waiting for the information to come out. Already facing a backlash. Right out of the gate, they claim that it helps incumbents that are clinging to their seats. Well, just like when we had the campaign finance reform, if you want to call it that. That was just to benefit incumbents. It's interesting how when people have a job that they can vote themselves benefits and make sure that they can stay in forever, that's the exact direction they had. A bipartisan redistricting panel approved the maps, complete with significant changes to at least 3 battleground districts, as I mentioned, including redrawing Brandon Williams' 22nd district to include more Democrat-friendly territory, like the city of Syracuse and the village of Auburn. But before they even approved the maps, Orange County State Senator James Skoufis, Democrat, was already saying, quote, these maps are a disgrace and ought to be rejected by the legislature. So what this means is they did not go Democrat enough. Yes. Without Skoufis and potentially other Democrats, Republicans would need to vote to pass the new maps. Redistricting maps need a 2/3 majority when one party controls both chambers of the legislature, as we are well aware Democrats do today. While Democrats stand to potentially benefit from the changes to the 22nd district that comes at the cost of giving Mark Molinaro some more conservative-leaning ground in central New York, Representative Pat Ryan, a Democrat from the 18th, would also likely benefit by having some areas north of Kingston, like Woodstock, included in his district. So that's kind of just a quick overview. I know it's not the sexiest topic, but it's a very important one because this is a mess. And we know the petitions begin here at the end of the month. And you'll have people taking out, congressional candidates taking out their petitions, not knowing where they're actually running. So we have another mess on our hands. Just again, another example of making it more confusing for voters, which is always nice of those in Albany to do. We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Yes, we do want to talk about Fani Willis. Just quickly, you've seen the coverage. She loses it essentially in court, saying such things as, it's a lie, it's a lie. Don't be cute with me. I'm not on trial here. I do find it interesting that her beau was paid back in cash, and they said, well, where did you get the cash? ATM? Oh, no, I just keep a lot of money in the house. Kind of an interesting, it is what she testified to. After the break and after Willis and Merchant continued to interrupt and talk over each other, Merchant being the lawyer, McAfee, the judge, warned Willis, you have to listen to the question as asked, and if this happens again and again, I'm going to have no choice but to strike the testimony. I like he puts a disclaimer in there again and again. Give a little wiggle room there. During another heated exchange, when Merchant questioned about how she split bills with Wade, Willis shot back, that was cute, but I didn't give him money in a contract. Don't be cute with me and think you're not going to get an answer. You'll have to find the coverage yourself. I'm sure you are aware of it by now. Jeffrey Toobin. And you can say what you want about Jeffrey Toobin. And if you recall the dark days of COVID and Zoom calls. But anyway, Jeffrey Toobin said, so what if they had a relationship? Who cares? Why does that disqualify them in this proceeding? Or as CNN's legal analyst, former prosecutor Michael Moore, I believe unrelated to the director, said that Willis and Wade hold the keys to the truth of this case and could let it all out and let the people see it. But at every turn, it's not a goal of transparency. And that their goal is to hide the ball and look like you're indignant, that you're upset, that you're going to call out people for trying to put you on trial. That's a really quick overview. Also, just because we probably won't have a chance because I see the Assemblyman pulled up now, if you have an opportunity, there are two great articles kind of updating us on what we talked about yesterday on the program about how Russia could cripple us with this satellite system, this nuke satellite scenario. So you can find that for yourself at the New York Post. And I would also you have fun with this and you can comment while we talk with the Assemblyman. Joe Manchin is floating Mitt Romney as a potential running mate as he weighs a presidential bid, a third-party presidential bid. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to play a quick clip from last night's news at Big Fox News at 10, and then we're going to be talking with the Assemblyman. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
A news conference was held in Big Flats today to discuss the 10% cut in state funding to the CHIPS program, which supports local roads. The program is essential here in the Southern Tier.
A $60 million cut, or 10%, would be a devastating cut to our local infrastructures.
$116,000 to do 1 mile of road, blacktop 1 mile of road, and we have 75 miles of road right here in the town of Big Flats. Just to put that in perspective for money needed.
The Consolidated Local Street and Highway Improvement Program, or CHIPS, provides funding to municipalities for construction and repairs of highways, bridges, and other infrastructure not a part of the state highway system.
Because it's mile per mile. No matter how many miles you have, you get the same rate per mile. So it's a very fair program.
Assemblyman Paul Massano says CHIPS funding is the lifeblood of the Southern Tier infrastructure, and cuts could even affect property taxes.
It would be devastating to the property taxpayers because they would have to make up that difference.
Most of the roads in the Southern Tier are not a part of the state highway system, so our region relies heavily on the CHIPS program to maintain local roads. Locals say many roads have needed attention for years, but lack of funding has delayed paving and repairs.
But yet we can't get $5 million to repair one road through the village, which is a main road.
Just like to see the money restored so we can keep up with our roads.
So hopefully she'll look around the corner and say, hey, I did make a mistake, and put it back in for us. Because the infrastructure is the main thing, and everybody drives on local roads, so.
Because they are falling apart.
Big Fox contacted the governor's office, but weren't able to get a comment on what was said at the conference today. Sonia Ellison, Big Fox News, Big Flats.
Thank you, Sonia. Watch Big Fox News at 10. And joining us in the studio, I thought that was a good segue into our interview, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, Frank. Good to be with you again.
That was a good press conference yesterday.
Yeah, it was a good press conference and an important press conference. Obviously, in March there's a big rally where all the highway superintendents come up to Albany each and every year to kind of
Orange shirts and
orange shirts. Local roads are essential. Local roads matter, and it's a good thing. But Senator O'Mara, Assemblyman Friend, and myself thought, and some of my colleagues were talking, let's do this around our districts. And we rallied highway superintendents. We had basically from a 3-county region, Steuben, Chemung, and Schuyler. Had some local elected officials there as well with us. And you saw the presence. We had a good number of people there that came out because they recognized how important this issue is. CHIPS is really is basically the funding that goes directly from the state right to the local municipalities. Each and every municipality, from New York City to Long Island to upstate New York, gets an allocation for CHIPS, which they use to help fix their local roads, bridges, and culverts. And it's really a really critical funding source. I've said it over and over again. I mean, it's really the lifeblood of our upstate transportation network. And my colleagues downstate like to talk about the MTA, and we get it, and we support the MTA because it helps many major businesses around here, like Alstom, Hornell, CAF, and Chemung County. So those are important investments, but there needs to be some parity, and we need to have some understanding from our colleagues downstate, and especially this governor, of why we need to invest in this critical infrastructure. And the fact of the matter is, the governor in her budget, she didn't cut anything out of the MTA budget for operations or capital. In fact, she increased it, which is fine, but she proposed a devastating 10% cut to the CHIPS program, which would be a really devastating, as I just said. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but really devastating to our local municipalities, the work they can do to fix their roads, bridges, and culverts, and to the property taxpayers who would have to make up this gap. And it's really concerning from my perspective why she made this cut. So we're rallying to say, let's, number one, restore this cut, but also add funding to it, $200 million, and it's warranted, it's justified. I mean, the fact of the matter is, too, even with any increases they're getting, they may get, it's being eaten up by the inflation. The Federal Highway Administration reported recently that just over the past 30 months, the highway construction inflation rate has increased nearly 60%.
It changes every budget line that you've made throughout.
It certainly does.
Because you have no idea. And then I know we talked about it, Phil, but so many people have mentioned it when we do this program. Maybe not give Hollywood so many tax breaks. Why don't we focus on, because if there's one thing people can all agree on, especially this time of year, they don't like potholes. They don't, this is a perfect time of year for this press conference.
And exactly. And this is and you just mentioned it. I mean, the budgeting is all about priorities. I mean, the governor indicated her budget, this isn't a priority. But yeah, she puts $2.4 billion in for the migrant crisis in New York City,
which we're going to be talking about.
She put $700 million for the Hollywood Film Tax Credit, which provides tax breaks to the Hollywood elite. And quite frankly, even Saturday Night Live has benefited from this funding source.
They weren't going anywhere.
Exactly. I mean, how do they start out their show every week? Live from New York, not live from Saskatchewan. They're going to stay in New York. We don't need to be subsidizing Saturday Night Live and Hollywood elites. Let's put the money here. And our people up here deserve to have some of their state tax dollars to come back to their local communities to fix their local roads, bridges, and culverts, just like people downstate want some of theirs. It's happening downstate. It's not happening enough upstate. We've had some success in the past, but it's really a call to arms on this specific case with this budget situation right now. We need to do it. And some of the studies that are out there, the town highway superintendents said themselves in a recent updated analysis, there's a $2 billion gap in funding for local infrastructure outside of New York City. The comptroller has updated reports where it said $89 billion in unmet needs, including $27 billion for bridges. And these are local infrastructure, not big interstate infrastructure. And then TRIP came out, they're a transportation advocacy group with their recent report saying it's costing New York State over $36 billion annually, and more than $3,600 per driver, and additional costs, whether it's damage to vehicles, wear and tear, a whole host of issues, and how they analysis by the road conditions. And there was another study, I believe it was Reason Foundation, said when they evaluated the highway system last April, said New York highway system ranks 49th in the nation. So we're either last or first, and it's usually the worst.
Yes. Well, absolutely. And I know you mentioned it a lot, but I think when people start to think, listen, this is what our school buses are going over. These are the roads that you're driving home every night. This isn't something to take lightly. This is something that the governor should really be focused on instead of cutting from.
Yes, I mean, this is about safety. I mean, we need to be proactive, not reactive. I mean, it's about economic development. I believe the statistic we use for every $150 million invested creates 4,200 construction jobs.
Yeah.
You know, our first responders are going to emergencies. If a road is out, if a bridge is out, and they have to take a detour, that can be a matter of life and death. And the other matter is why this is so justified. 87% of the roads in New York State are owned and maintained by our local municipalities. 52% of the 18,000 bridges in New York State are owned and maintained by our municipalities, and 48% of the miles driven are driven on our local roads. And in other statistics, I say, every dollar invested in the CHIPS program is one less dollar that comes from the local property taxpayer.
Right.
Every dollar we invest in the CHIPS program saves $6 to $14 in long-term rehabilitation costs. This is common sense, and we certainly shouldn't be cutting this program. I don't know why the governor proposed that. Hopefully my colleagues and the legislative leaders, because we sent the letter to the governor and
Yes.
legislative leaders on Wednesday to highlight these concerns, highlight our ask, highlighted all the statistics that some of them were saying here, because it's warranted and it's justified, and we need to address this situation.
Well, it goes back to what you're saying. It's about priorities.
It is about
Because when we talk about the Hollywood breaks and the migrant issue, I mean, this is not something, again, that you can overlook. It's not as if, like you said, a bridge goes out. Well, I guess there goes that. It blows my mind that we even have to have these conversations every year.
Well, I don't understand it, Frank. This is just a common sense issue. And the thing I always tell people is this is a fair formula. It's dividend on the miles you have and things of that nature. It's a really fair formula. It benefits everyone. New York City benefits from this funding. Long Island benefits for this funding. But upstate in our rural areas particularly benefit for funding. And not to reiterate the point, it is the lifeblood. And in some cases, it's the only funding some of our upstate communities get to fix their local roads, bridges, and culverts. And a 10% cut in that funding would be absolutely devastating for public safety, would be devastating for the road work and infrastructure work they need to do, would be devastating to the property taxpayers, quite frankly, because they'd have to make up that difference if they want to maintain their local roads, bridges, and culverts.
When we come back, we're going to talk everybody's favorite topic, electric school buses. Does that sound good?
Hopefully.
All right. We'll be right back with
Get some
Frankly
coffee.
Speaking. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. There's our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm Frank Acom. This is Frankly Speaking, and joining us in the studio is Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Phil, I'm not surprised by how much talk goes over the air when people are texting and voicemailing me about electric bus mandates, but I was a little surprised and taken back. But people are starting to realize how this is just, let's face it, not possible.
It is impossible. It's not feasible.
No.
It's certainly not affordable, and it's not reliable. From range issues. But this is something myself, Senator O'Mara, someone friend, all of us have been talking about for a while. In fact, earlier this week on Monday, we had a press conference. Both the Senate and Assembly Republican Conference had a press conference to really say pump the brakes, and I would say slam the brakes on the school bus EV mandate. And from my perspective, we talked about the energy policy in the state and where they're headed. It's part of a radical energy plan that's really aimed at taking away consumer choice in how you heat your home, cook your food, power your buildings, and the vehicle you drive. And we talk about unfunded mandates all the time. This is, in fact, the mother
It really
of
is.
all unfunded mandates. And just for the record, the governor came out, and when we were doing the interview with the media, I'm like, she's going to come out and say it's going to, there's $500 million in the Bond Act. President Biden talks about the Inflation Reduction Act that has money in it. If you take all that money and you used it to purchase electric school buses, even Doreen Harris, the president of the NYSERDA, who is the co-author of the Climate Action Council plan, said in the budget hearing last week that all that money would be enough to pay for just 3,000 school buses. We have a fleet of nearly 50,000 school buses.
Wow, think of that cost.
The cost is exorbitant. I mean, you just look at one budget bus, a regular near zero diesel emission school bus is about $125,000, maybe $150,000. Our electric school buses can range anywhere from $400,000 to $450,000. That's like triple the cost. Empire Center did an analysis that this is going to cost $8 to $15 billion. But that doesn't include everything.
The
Frank. I mean,
infrastructure,
you need charging stations. You're going to need a garage to put these in. You got to have so much space. And the biggest one, it's not feasible because we don't know if the grid can handle it. There's been no. This is the problem. There's been no cost-benefit analysis. There's been no feasibility analysis with working with the New York Independent System Operators and the utilities and the Public Service Commission to see if this is something that's reasonable, can be done, and no safety analysis because we know these EVs, lithium-ion batteries start on fire. We see them with the e-bikes, but same technology. We need to make sure it's verified and works. And Tom Douglas, the superintendent of the Horsehead School District, joined us for the press conference. He went through some statistics. He said, I think if I remember them, 8 to 15 of his current buses would not be able to complete their routes under the battery technology today. But he also said it would cost our school district an additional $5 to $10 million to help bring the power into the school, and that would be borne by the local property taxpayer. Another school superintendent who joined us, I believe, was from Shenandoah, came up for his school district. They have to build a complete substation. They've been quoted a cost of $30 million. The state of New York's not paying for that.
No.
That's going to be borne by the local property taxpayers. So it's mind-blowing to me that this governor and my colleagues want to move full speed ahead with this. And they say we need more education. We don't need more education. We need really pump the brakes on this thing. We need to do, so we have a bill. We put a bill and we common sense things, because right now the mandate says that beginning in July of 2027, every new school bus has to be an electric school bus until they convert their full fleet by 2035. Our bill basically eliminates that 2035 deadline for the conversion. It also says you don't have to, the school districts don't have to begin making a purchase for their electric school buses until January 2045, or until the state converts their fleet fully first. And why not? And whatever one is later. And here's the hypocritical thing about this, Frank. I know we were talking. The state of New York is asking our school districts to complete a full conversion of their fleet a full 5 years before the state of New York has to do it. The deadline for their time frame is 2040, and for school districts it will be 2035 to convert their whole fleet over. But here's the thing. In the state language, it says 2040 for the state unless it's not feasible to do so. Our school districts do not have that opportunity.
Yeah, they can't just change the rules, and that's what I don't understand, because it's an arbitrary date. There's nothing significant about 2035. So have you seen, and I doubt because it's so divided in Albany, have you seen any bipartisan support for what you're proposing? Because the people that are running and want to win re-election are going to have to hear from taxpayers when these bills start coming in.
We said it, and we said, listen, my colleagues, if they're not hearing this, because every school district I've talked to is up in arms about this, they're hearing it, and if they're just putting it off the side, then shame on them. I mean, they're going to have to deal with this. I mean, especially the issue. I mean, school bus purchases have to be approved by the voters.
You're right.
And it's costly. If they don't approve, what are they going to mandate it on them anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, what's going to happen?
Must be, because I can't imagine if you see the cost of that when you go to vote on the school budget. A lot of those times people just check yes, but when you see these staggering numbers, who's going to support it?
No one. And I think when we want to bus kids from Corning or Horseheads up to Syracuse or Albany for, like, Albany, I think this week is a state wrestling tournament championships. You're going to need more buses. And the New York State Association of Pupil Transportation did a study, billions upon $1 billion. They're going to need, I believe it was 10,000 additional school bus drivers, because you're going to need more buses.
And we can't get school bus drivers now.
You can't get them now. There's a shortage of them. So, and these add to the costs that aren't being in consideration. So, again, our bill is about, let's delay the implementation date. Let's put a halt on it, pump the brakes. Let's do a feasibility study. Let the Commissioner of Education work with the NISO, work with utilities and the Public Service Commission to say, is this feasible? And if not, we can stop right now. Also require that all the components of the school buses be made here in the USA with U.S. parts and sourced here in the USA, because we've talked about it. They always talk about green. The materials used to produce the electric vehicles, the lithium-ion batteries, cobalt is utilized. 70% of the cobalt is extracted in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's well documented they're using child labor to produce these, produce and mine for the cobalt. These kids are in these hand mining in these artesian mines. They're dying because the mines collapse on them. They're being killed. They're being maimed. They're being paralyzed. But no one wants to talk about that. So
I know we talked about it last time. As long as it's not happening here.
As long as it's not happening
it's
here.
Horrible.
As long as kids aren't dying and being maimed here. As long as we're not polluting waters, rivers, and streams over here. It's okay, because it's helping us meet our so-called clean green energy goals, and it's not clean and green. And so let's do a cost-benefit analysis. Let's do a feasibility study, see if it's reasonable. Let's do a safety analysis and work with fire prevention, because these fires, they burn hot, they burn long, and they burn fast. We had one gentleman who's a former bus mechanic talked about, if a fire caught on fire, you would have seconds to get those kids out of a school bus. So they can do all the drills they want. It's not going to make sense. When a tragedy like this happens, that's when people are going to start talking about it. But we need to talk about it now. We need to pump the brakes on this thing, and in fact, we need to slam the brakes on this thing. It's just common sense. And how hypocritical is it that the state of New York is saying, you need to go first, school districts. You're going to be like the guinea pig for this. If the battery technology is going to evolve, let's let the battery technology evolve. If the safety requirements are going to evolve, we can get to the point where these materials are sourced here in the USA and not using child labor and not polluting waters and rivers and streams in other countries that we don't see, then let's wait till then. And it's like almost like, Frank, like I've talked about the whole energy policy infrastructure. It's like you don't tear down a bridge before you build a new one. But that's what we're doing with this whole energy policy, whether it's getting rid of natural gas, going to electric school buses. And it's really a runaway freight train. It's heading down the tracks at the public, the taxpayers, the property taxpayers, and many don't have any idea. Well, this one is the one catching steam. This is the one we need to address right away. To think that every new school bus after 2027 has to be an electric purchase, and the state doesn't have to do that, is kind of ridiculous and hypocritical.
And we can't afford it. I mean, I wish people would realize we're taxpayers. You can only what's the saying? Milk a stone for so long. We're out of money, you know. But I did receive this comment, Phil. Could you imagine having a bus full of kids headed to nationals events? How many times an electric bus would have to stop to get recharged? It's going to be like the pioneer days, where you're going to have to rest your horse overnight. The kids are going to have to camp.
Exactly, and you're going to need more school buses because of the range issues. Because some of them aren't going to be able to complete the routes, like Superintendent Douglas said. You're going to need more bus drivers, and you have a hard time getting them now. I mean, this is really, really, it makes no sense whatsoever to me, Frank. So we got to really pump the brakes on this thing. There's a lot of issues with this and concerns that I have as we move forward. And again, it's really part of this whole green energy agenda that's really, really aimed at taking away consumer choice on how you heat your home, cook your food, power your buildings, and the vehicles you drive. And the other hypocritical thing I will say about this, we have a benchmark for 2027 getting new purchases.
Yeah.
The state has to convert their regular light duty fleet by 2035. The heavy duty fleet is 2040. So we had benchmarks.
Yeah.
In 1 year, we put them in saying 25% of the light duty fleet had to be electric by 2025, 50% had to be by 2030, and then fully converted by 2035. State 1 year later got rid of those benchmarks of 2025 and 2030. So they just now have to have their whole fleet converted by 2035. So they have time. They can wait. Oh, of course, unless it's not economically or feasible to do so. But our school districts, our school property taxpayers don't have that feasibility.
That luxury.
Luxury.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're thinking. It's just,
It's
backwards.
just, it really is. And we've got to take a break, but I want to read this comment from a viewer. Thank you, Phil Palmisano, for your leadership on this ridiculous school bus issue. Of course, I respectfully disagree that the regulation is impossible. It is possible for rural upstate to comply if they just send everybody home and go virtual like they did for COVID. Maybe that's the option, Phil.
Yeah, I didn't
Don't
know where
propose
you were going
that.
with
I know.
That's
Me
great.
either. All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano in that studio. We received this comment, Phil, from a viewer, and people can call in with their questions at any time, leave a voicemail or text. Wondering where the reduced funding for roads was allocated to. Are the state revenues down due to people leaving the state? Is it shifted to housing Biden's illegal migrants? Is it being pushed to save the planet with EV buses and other plans that will make no differences in global warming?
I guess the yes to all those
Yeah,
questions when
that's
you think about it.
pretty simple.
I mean, the budget this year spends about $4 billion more than last year's in her proposed budget. It'll probably end up more than that when they finalize budget, because that's usually what happens. I mean, the governor also cut funding for upstate local school districts with the foundation formula manipulations she made to it. Yes, so I mean, we're talking about, she's talking about $2.4 billion for migrants, the illegal migrant situation we're doing. Now you have to take into consideration last year's budget had $1 billion for the migrant situation. It actually ended up being $1.9 billion when all said and told. So we're talking about $4.3 billion for the migrant situation. The Hollywood film tax credit we talked about, again, $700 million. Yeah. And then there's things like $150 million for swimming pools and planting trees. I mean, and budgeting is all about priorities. We can talk about this time and time again, but local roads, bridges, and culverts they're the lifeblood of our upstate transportation. That everyone benefits, every community benefits from it. And the MTA, it gets frustrating to me when the MTA is seeing increases in their operating and capital infrastructure improvements, but the governor goes and cuts this program. And no governor has ever cut the CHIPS program before. No governor, at least in my time frame, they might have cut an ad that was done, like when they added like winter recovery and things like that.
Sure.
But they never cut the CHIPS based aid, and that's a scary sign from this governor. And you know what they tried to say, Frank? They said, because last year the final budget that was negotiated, we added $60 million in for CHIPS, which has been eaten up and eroded by the 58% consumer inflation rate on the construction costs. So the final negotiated budget increased CHIPS $60 million. The legislature pushed for it. So it's kind of, quote, considered a legislative ad because legislative. So she cut that. She goes, we didn't cut anything. We just cut the legislative ad. No, Governor, it's a three-way budget agreement that you signed off on. You own it. You took credit for it.
Right,
Now you need to take credit for the cut.
Yeah, here's a great comment. Let the advancement of technology, this is about EVs, of course, let the advancement of technology timetable guide the decision, not virtue signaling mandates. Example, LED technology saves a lot of electricity, only after the product became affordable. That's a great point.
Right, and even during the budget hearings last year, and I know I'm pivoting, the Basil Sagos and Dorian Harris, and I questioned them during the budget hearing. They said in an article last year when they were trying to change the methodology of emissions from 20 years to 100 years, which if they don't, will increase, by their own numbers, increase gas prices at the pump by 63 cents a gallon,
Right.
increase natural gas home heating costs by 79%. They said if it's not affordable, if businesses can't afford it, then this is not going to work. Well, it's not going to work.
It's not gonna work.
So that's the thing. It is virtual signaling, and it's not applicable. Let the technology, even the technology doesn't evolve right now to meet the mandates for this for our energy plan by 2040. The NISO says we need 27 to 45 gigawatts of new generating capacity. The technology is not in existence yet, but yet we're going to keep moving down this pathway with this train without having the infrastructure in place to do it. So we shouldn't shut down natural gas power plants and things of that nature until the new infrastructure is in place. Don't tear down a bridge before you build a new one. And that's what they're doing with every part of this energy policy, especially EV school buses.
I'm going to take another short break. We're a little early on the break, but we have so much to catch up on. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Turn up my mic. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano live in the studio, in the Hesselson studio, that is. Phil, a couple quick things I want to go through because we have so much to talk about. But last week we talked about budget hearings. They wrapped up this week. What's next? Where are we at?
Well, they wrapped up on Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe. Yeah, it's this week.
Had a busy week.
Yeah, no, it's been quite a hectic week. So we're on President's Week break. We go back after that. Okay. And now what you'll see is really how it works is the two one houses work on their one house budget resolutions, which kind of highlight what their priorities are for the three-way budget negotiations. So we should probably be taking that up in probably the second week in March.
Okay.
And then from then you'll have conference committees, which really doesn't do a lot. It's more just to kind of highlight, again, priorities. But then hopefully you have a three-way budget agreement by April 1st, which I don't think it's going to pass by April 1st under any circumstances. I feel confident saying that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of issues here to unravel, but there's a lot of priorities that need to be addressed. So we'll see where that goes. But that's the process now. But we're going to have to continue to have the advocacy that's going to be going on, and rightfully so. I know the highway guys will be up in March to kind of.
Is that March? I was going to ask.
First week in March. That's when they have their advocacy day, and you'll see 700 highway superintendents around the state walking around.
It's a great picture.
With their orange shirts on, saying local roads are essential and local roads matter.
Mm-hmm. And also, and I mentioned, not jokingly, you've had a very busy week, but you had a press conference earlier in the week about the migrant crisis, and boy, especially if you read the New York Post, it's terrifying. Some of the crime rate waves and the attack on the police that we talked about the other week. It's amazing that when it's the number one polled issue for voters, number one or number two, depending on what poll you go to, you would think Albany, specifically Governor Hochul, would want to do more.
Yes, I mean, not once has Governor Hochul, or for that matter, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, said to President Biden, shut down the border. Mm-hmm. All they said is give us more money so we can deal with it. Don't shut down the border. But yet they welcome them. They send virtual signal and whatever. I mean, they want to come to New York City because they're a self-proclaimed sanctuary city. Mm-hmm. What we did is Jarek Gandolfo, a colleague of mine from Long Island, he has legislation in basically they would repeal this basically what it was in essence a sanctuary state status, because under Governor Cuomo he put an executive order in saying that the state and local law enforcement cannot cooperate with ICE officials. So to detain, if they were to detain someone who was a legal immigrant, they should be able to contact ICE and get them out of the state and deport them. But no, they took the communication away, and there would be penalties if they violated. So that was one part of the bill. We put in legislation, Matt Slater, my colleague from the Hudson Valley, which we're co-sponsoring as well, that would say if each and every migrant that comes into our state, we have to register them so we can track them to do background checks. Yeah. Because when they come up here, they're coming up supposedly under an asylum status, and the court hearings for these dates are 5, 6, 7 years away. They're not next week or next month. So we need to be able to track and register them. And you saw the criminals who assaulted the police officers. more held on bail. So
Right.
here's our
Of course.
failed bail reform laws
Yes.
coming full circle to help the illegal migrant situation. The guys coming out of the courthouse flipped off the finger,
Yeah.
and they didn't arrest him. And Alvin Bragg, who doesn't arrest a serious crime, but
Yeah.
let him go.
Yeah.
And now they think they might be on the run someplace out to California. You know, why
Yeah.
not?
Why wouldn't you be? And I mean, and they now we're learning, and media's not reporting on it much, but the Post did, that they're part of a gang. That's one of the issues, because we've talked about it. I don't want to get on a tangent, but young people are now being recruited to these gangs because they know with our lax laws, they're not going to get in trouble.
Right, raise the age. I mean, we have a
Yeah.
whole host of statistics of kids that are doing violent crime, and they aren't serving any time
No.
because they're under 17, 18, and we need to address that. So raise the age, bail reform, or parole laws, all, as we talked about time and time again, the bail reform laws are tipped at the scales of justice in favor of criminals over law enforcement, over crime victims and their families, and over public safety. And that's unfortunate.
Oh, we received another. This really is turning into Phil Fridays. We're getting message after message. People can keep the questions coming in. Good morning, Frank. If New York switches to 100% electric, vehicles, homes, etc., what happens to the natural gas and petroleum infrastructure and manpower in the state of New York? That's a good question.
They want to dismantle it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's what their plan is.
They don't have an
Their
end
whole
game.
plan is to dismantle the natural gas infrastructure, delivery, and supply system in New York. That's part of the plan. There's a New York Heat Act that would allow the PSC to come in and basically not approve obligation to serve and stop improvements and dismantling them and say you have to keep with electrification. And another cost side of the electrification, there were 3 studies done, one in the Consumer Climate Action Council plan, one by the Consumer Energy Alliance, and the other one was a company did it out in Western New York. The cost to fully electrify your home for a resident is about $35,000 to $50,000. Because you're talking about heat pumps, you're talking about utilities,
Yeah.
and you're not just talking about them. You're talking about dealing with the shell of your property, your weatherization, your windows, your doors, and also your electric circuit upgrades for the mandates, and you know whether you get EVs or not. I mean, we're talking about significant infrastructure improvements that you need to make on your home. And they say, well, you know, there's save money on your electric bill. What the senior citizens, you know, with all due respect, is not going to get the benefit of that over their lifetime.
No.
None of us really get
No.
the benefit. And why should you have to pay $35,000 to convert your home out when natural gas is a reliable source of heating?
Just for the
energy?
pleasure of
And-
living here.
Yes, and the fact of the matter is, for the viewers, 60% of New Yorkers heat their homes with natural gas.
Yeah.
40% of our generation comes from natural gas. So we're talking about dismantling the whole natural gas infrastructure. And the other problem with this, they say we're going to save the world. We're not going to save the world. New York is only 0.4% of total global emissions.
Yeah.
0.4. China's 29%, has 1,000 coal plants and building more each and every week.
Right.
And in fact, last year they expanded their coal generating capacity by 70 gigawatts. Our total generating capacity with wind, solar, hydro, natural gas, and nuclear is 41 gigawatts. So they're double our total generating capacity with coal. So they're not going to stop coal. And that's coal. They're not going to get rid of natural gas. No other state is going to get rid of natural gas, maybe except for California. Pennsylvania, Ohio aren't. So what are we going to do? This is going to be lead to the continuation leading out migration that we've seen, with more families, farmers, small businesses, and manufacturers leaving our state. And if businesses, when you talk to businesses, when they talk about energy policy, what do they talk about? And probably homeowners too, affordable and reliable. If they can't get affordable and reliable here, then they're going to depart our state.
Another comment, put migrants in the newer Southport Correctional Facility that the state abandoned. You know, that's not, they may be joking, but that's probably an option. I mean, they're looking really for any locations at
They're
this
looking
point.
for any locations. I know when there was some talk about putting them in closed down correctional facilities. The problem with, even if you did that, then they're in our local communities, and then they're straining our social services
If
resources.
New York City doesn't have the
Yes.
resources, how do we?
Yes, and that's the other part of the bill, the legislation. We have our leader Barkley talked about that I mentioned. You would need local communities to opt in to accepting migrants coming into communities.
Right.
We're not a sanctuary communities up here. We're not sanctuary counties, and some of our counties have said that. So yeah, so I would not support putting any migrants in our facilities here, because where are most of the correctional facilities? They're in upstate New York.
Exactly.
And Mayor Adams wants to get them upstate New York, and he got a backlash. He saw all the local counties saying
Right.
no. So I would not support that. But who knows what Governor Hochul is going to try to do with state resources.
All right, we got to take our last break, and then we're going to wrap things up. Stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Phil, this is on Friday. This is where we do a mad dash, and we cover a lot right at the end because we start to run out of time. So here we go. You had a rally, and this is so important to you, and I know it's a passion of yours to speak out about our most vulnerable population. I thought maybe you could talk about that.
Yes, there was a rally in Albany on Monday. When I got up there, I went and joined the rally. You had individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities there. You also had direct support professionals, the direct care workers who were tasked with the care for our most vulnerable population. I was a direct support professional. I did do direct care over 20 years ago, so I saw firsthand the direct impact these direct support professionals have on enhancing the quality of life and improving the quality of care of our most vulnerable citizens. And what I've said over and over again, we talked about budgeting is about priorities. And if we're not taking care of our most vulnerable citizens, those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the direct support professionals who are tasked with enhancing their quality of life and improving their quality of care, then what does that say to us about us as a state? Governor Hochul's budget priorities: $2.4 billion for the migrants, $700 million for the Hollywood film tax credit. Let's plant more trees. Let's $150 million for pools. Let's take care of our most vulnerable citizens. And what we're talking about with the direct support professionals, there's a wage inequity. If you work for the state of New York and you work with most vulnerable, you're getting $25, $26 an hour. If you're working at a local ARC or a not-for-profit, you're lucky if you're making 16, maybe 17 bucks an hour. But yet, then you can go work for McDonald's or Burger King, nothing against someone who works there.
Right.
But if they can make more money working over there than they can work in taking care of our most vulnerable citizens, there's something seriously wrong with that. That needs to be addressed. So, and Governor Hochul in her budget priorities put a 1.5% COLA. 1.5. The advocates, quite frankly, are asking for only 3.2%. And I said at the rally, that's woefully inadequate. That's not enough. There should be a wage supplement in there to help our direct support professionals. But when we've done this in the past, what the governor and past administrations have done, they come on the backside and take reimbursement away from on another avenue through the Medicaid reimbursement, because a lot of these funding positions are done through Medicaid reimbursement. So they can say, yeah, we're giving you a big COLA, but yeah, we're going to take money on the backside through the elimination. It's just frustrating, things that our viewers take for granted, going to the movies, going to the mall, going to the store. We can do that. But our most vulnerable citizens, those with intellectual disabilities, can't do that unless they have the direct support professional staff who care for them and help to address those quality of life and quality care issues. And it's just mind-blowing to me that this isn't a priority. And really, people aren't speaking up about this. And you wouldn't unless, one, you're a direct support professional, you work for an agency like the Steuben ARC or Chemung and Schuyler ARC in those agencies, or you're a parent who is a parent of someone with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are, quite frankly, scared to death about the future care of their loved ones, like when they get older and they pass away, who's going to care for them? And sometimes these direct support professionals are they're in the homes with the residents, the consumers, the individuals with the disabilities. They're like family to these individuals. I've seen it, getting a hug and a friendly smile. It means a lot. And that's what these direct support professionals want to do. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they care for our most vulnerable citizens, but they can only do it for so long. If they can't take care of their family's expenses and family's bills, and they can go make more money over at Burger King or Taco Bell or McDonald's, there's just something fundamentally wrong with that. And I wish this is something more and more people would speak out about. This is something that will always be a passion for mine. I knew it when I worked there. It stuck with me, and I knew I'd keep it for as long as I'm here. And I talk about chips. I talk about all these other things. Yes, it's about priorities, but this is something that actually must be addressed and should be an absolutely top priority, hands down.
We're just about out of time. There's nothing really surprising about the Independent Redistricting Commission, the congressional maps. Did you see anything I know it's real new?
Yeah, I haven't seen all the maps, but it came out. It was voted yesterday. The interesting thing, it was voted 9-1 in favor. Like 2 years ago, when you had to split, there was 2 maps, 5-5. So that's why you had the problems. What's interesting to see, because you need 100 votes to pass it. Well, the key is going to be to watch the Democrat majorities. Are they going to try to reject it? Because if it gets rejected twice, then the legislature can draw their own maps. And if they do that, go down that path, I think that's going to be very challenging. So we'll see what happens with that. That's still to be determined, but that needs to happen soon because petitions go out soon.
Yeah. Technically, I think it's due a day or two after.
So
which I don't think it's going to happen if I had to make my prediction. And how much fun was it? And thank you again for doing this, Phil. Stopping by the Painted Post Food Pantry. I showed the pictures on Monday.
It was great. Thanks for asking me to go over there, and great people volunteering.
Rita and Mike. I mean, talk about what they can accomplish in that little room.
And the thing that's staggering to me, and people should realize that we don't talk about it. There's a lot of food insecurity in our region. I mean, the people they serve. I think it was. I apologize if I'm wrong. I thought 800 visits a month. Something like that. Those are real people.
in
Those
our
are real
community.
families in our community. So we'll be cognizant of that, and you can volunteer,
Volunteer,
make a
help
donation,
out, make it-
go to the food pantry, because they do great work
They do great
here
work.
in our local communities and help take care of some of those in need.
Phil, thanks so much, as always.
Thank you, Frank.
All right. As a quick reminder before we go, don't forget, it's the Black History Month celebration on Big Fox tonight at 10:30, right after news. Sunday at 11 a.m. in case you miss it or you want to watch it twice. I saw a sneak peek yesterday. It is really, really good. I think you're going to like it, and I can't wait to hear what you think on Monday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday morning starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking.